First of all, we have 4 young Thais who all have very different political views and backgrounds. They're going to introduce themselves to you as well, but please welcome Chayut Setbunsang, Panu Wongchaum, Kod Sanarith, and Napas, we call him Zeze, Napom Bedra.
And to chair the panel, we're so honored to have one of the world's most distinguished journalists with us. The World Affairs editor for the BBC News. He's reported from 120 countries, including 30 war zones. He's famed for coming under fire in Iraq, for being hunted by Robert Mugabe's men, and escaping the Taliban dressed in a burqa. He is someone who's a legend back in the UK. He's also somebody who was the first journalist to interview Aung San Suu Kyi after she was released, and we're absolutely delighted to have him here to chair this panel. Over to you, John.
Well, that's very nice of you. I'm feeling slightly uneasy, really, at hearing myself described like this. Because I'm a working journalist, like 2, I think, of my fellow panelists here. We've been actually having a rather interesting session just behind the scenes. My plan was just to tell them how horrible I was going to be if they talked too long. But as I listened to them, I thought, well, this is really, really interesting. So I think perhaps we may find that somebody with a long hook is going to have to come on and pull us off at some stage. But let me introduce everybody. Chayut Setbunsang, you'll have to forgive my awful pronunciation, who's a consultant at APCO Worldwide. Would you just describe yourself and your views, if you can, very briefly?
Yes, thank you, John. So I'm Chayut Setbunsang, and I'm a consultant at APCO Worldwide. We're a strategic communications firm. So my views on this is that I think we're at a time where we have to be very practical about what we're doing, and we should use this time we have in Thailand and Thai politics to really come together and work together for a brighter future and some more progress.
Panu Wongchaum, forgive my awful pronunciation. Thai is one of the several thousand languages I don't speak. Would you, in fact, apart from Farsi, I don't really speak anything very much, Russian and a bit of Chinese.
Yes, I'm Panu Wongchaum. I'm a reporter for China News Asia, based here in Thailand, covering Indochina. My views about Thai politics is simple. We need strong, sustainable democracy. We need to protect freedom of expression, and with this, this will enable young people to have more voices to change the future of the country.
Next, Kod Satrusayang. Can I call you Kod? Is that right?
Yes, please.
Does everybody call you Kod?
Yeah, that's my byline.
Great. Okay.
Hi, my name is Kod Satrusayang, and I am the correspondent for the Deutsche Presseagentur here in Thailand. My views are very simple. My reporting has taken me from the Middle East to Southeast Asia, and I've seen what happens when disaffected young people don't have something to believe in or a system that they can grasp hold of, and we need to change that.
And finally, Zizini Naya Pombedra.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
That's fine, that's
dear,
fine.
Dear, you would have thought I might learn how to pronounce the names, wouldn't you?
No problem. Good morning, everyone. My name is Napat Napompet. My nickname is Zizi, so John, you can call me Zizi. That's simpler than my full name. I'm a lawyer at Baker McKenzie, Thailand. We're the Bangkok office of a global law firm. And my views are pretty simple as well. I hope that by being here, we can have a constructive, positive dialogue on the future of Thai politics. And I wish to encourage young people to take more action and to be more involved in Thai politics.
Excellent. Well, you can see how good they are at being succinct. I'm deeply impressed. I couldn't possibly have done any of that. Now, what I want to ask you, we've got 15 minutes for a discussion of arguably the most important subject in Thailand today, which is where this country ought to go and is going politically, and what role young people play in this, because it's no secret, is it, that young people have largely been turned off politics in this country, perhaps because politics has supposedly ceased to exist for a time. Let's see what each of the panelists think the young people of the country, the younger people of the country at any rate, ought to do in order to create the kind of interest which will follow, which will be followed hopefully by some kind of new initiatives in political thinking in this country. And I'm just going to go down the line. Actually, I'm going to do it the other way around. I'm going to start with you. What, since you've got the microphone, which is the key piece of equipment, what can people do?
What can young people do?
Yeah.
I think, or I hope that young people can feel less apathetic about their involvement in politics. I think living in a very patriarchal society like Thailand, where a lot of decisions are made by elders, young people tend to think that they don't have a voice, they don't have a say, that they can't really do much to be catalysts for change, and that takes away a lot of their empowerment. My message would be that young people should never feel that way. They do have a voice. They can be a catalyst and be a force for the change that they want to see. It will not happen immediately, will not happen in 1 year or maybe 2 years. But first, they have to take an interest, and they want to find common ground with their peers, and they just first have to start talking about it. If they become afraid to speak, afraid to discuss and share their views, then no discussion will take place, and the dialogue cannot continue.
Okay, Cod, how do you get people talking? And what do they talk about?
I think even before they can begin talking, there is a need to adjust the way they approach not just politics, but all issues here. And that is to not accept what has been ingrained or fed to them by someone with supposedly higher authority. During the Soviet era, a lot of the young people that lived behind the East Bloc lived in protests, using a term known as if. They lived as if they were in a free and functioning society. They lived as if they were in a democracy. And by doing so and by taking actions as if they were living free and fair, they force authorities to not only crack down on them, but censor them, to do things to them that history will eventually vindicate. And that's how young people, not just in Thailand, but all over the world, where they see themselves as in unfair situations, they should live as if they are free. And history will eventually vindicate you.
That is a line which I have to say, one of the big leaders of the democracy movement in what was then Czechoslovakia once said to me. He said, I'm not even going to pretend, I'm not even going to think for a moment that I'm a slave of this government. I'm going to behave every day, every minute, as though I'm a free man. And of course, it was Václav Havel, and of course he became the president of a free country. So it does work, in other words. Okay, could you pass the microphone down? What do you think? I mean, is that realistic, or are we just talking kind of saying nice things?
I mean, sure, young people in this country will need to realize that they do have a voice, and that their voice voices do matter. But of course, what needs to really change is a lot of the structural problems that we have in Thailand since the dawn of civilian rule, since 1932, since the end of the absolute monarchy. There's always this idea that the state have a lot of role in people's lives, and this really needs to change. We need to end this model where the state, from whatever their political leanings are, have this ability to interfere and really lead the discourse, the discussions of all the political lives in Thailand. And we need to end this so-called nanny state here. And of course, the other thing is that young people also have to realize that in Thai society, their ability, not only their voice, but their ability also matters. In a country where there's a lot of patronage sort of system, young people need to go forward and realize that Thailand will slowly move towards a meritocracy. And these two changes, structural changes, will need to come not only from young people, but from the leadership now and the people that the movers and shakers of today. With these change in the structure of the country, perhaps that in the future, young people, 10 years from now, they can sort of have more say in the making of this country.
Just 10 years before they have more say, that's a bit gloomy, isn't it?
Well, it's been a very gloomy outlook since 1932, I would say. Thailand do swing back and forth, and we're still experimenting with democracy since 1932. And right now, we're in a major experiment too. It always seems that Thailand is in constant transition, and this is the problem. And I think these two structural changes will enable, perhaps, the country to move forward better in the future. But that's very optimistic.
What do you think?
I think the young people have a large role to play here. As Panu said, we've had this going on for such a long time, but we have the opportunity to say the buck stops here. We're up for the challenge. The future is for the making, but we have to make that future together, right? So, my dad has an expression: you can either be a thermometer where you reflect the temperature in the room and you react to your situations, or you can be a thermostat where you set the temperature and you regulate your environment. So, if you can be this sort of leader and bring people together, like-minded people from both sides of the aisle, have a meaningful discussion like the one we're having today, then I think there's hope in moving forward and championing these things: good governance, anti-corruption, and building democratic institutions.
We've seen, of course, in Burma, not very far away, how the kind of moral pressure that you're talking about can build up even from inside a house where the chief occupant isn't allowed to leave. And it infects, if that's the right word, the whole of a society, until finally, as we saw last week, she wins by an extraordinary landslide. But are there leaders of that moral stature here?
Well, I think the leaders have to begin, with the young people. That's why we're here today, to talk about how the young can lead the country forward, right? Because, the problems from 50, 60 years ago were started then. But today, we can sow the seeds of progress together. And I think, back to cooperating, finding the right people from both sides of the political spectrum, or, along the whole way. What happened in Myanmar is, historic. But to have elections, you have to have order, you have to have credibility. And, we can't have that here. We've seen this, last year, and this is why we are in the situation we are in. But what we can do with this time, there is some relative calm, and we can get together, start a dialogue, be open-minded, and these, re-examine your biases, and you can really, start some progress.
But can you pass the mic down? Is that, just you. That's not enough, is it? I mean, just to talk to people, to have opinions, it's got to be stronger than that, hasn't it? There's got to be some structure, hasn't there?
Sure, and that's what's lacking at this moment in time in Thailand, is because again, going back to my point where the state polarized, or state takes control of a lot of things, We had a military coup here more than a year ago, and the military are saying that they want to lead reform. They said that they want to guide the conversation. They said they're setting up all these different forums where young people, old people, people from different professions can have their voices heard. But that's the problem, is that, these sort of state-led, I'm not even going to mention, military, state-led forums or processes somehow, lack legitimacy and inclusiveness. And this is the problem we face in Thailand. People do have voices, but there's no platform at this moment in time where they can express their views. And for the last 10 years, we continue to go back to the streets with protests and with turmoil from different, instigated by different sides of the political divide. And it will continue to be this way until a credible leader, perhaps an individual can emerge from the mess and really lead a clear and express a clear view, like Ms. Aung San Suu Kyi in neighboring Myanmar. But at this time, and maybe this is my reporter side, a cynical side, saying I don't really see any figure in Thailand that can lead that kind of change. And that's why I say the movers and shakers now have to really address the structural problem so that we can move forward with the state, with the establishment having less role in politics.
Now, I know that the two of you both were reporting on what was happening, and I prefer to call it Burma, but I mean, we can call it Myanmar, only because I'm rather old-fashioned. I mean, the problem there, I said to Aung San Suu Kyi when I went to see her once, when she was supposedly in house arrest, isn't the answer actually you've got supporters in their hundreds of thousands, probably millions, isn't the answer just to come out on the streets? And she said, no, that's not the answer. And I thought, I have to say, I thought she was wrong. And of course, last week we saw how right she absolutely was. But, I mean, are there alternatives in Thailand to coming out on the streets?
Well, I am a reporter, as Panu is as well, and having covered the Thai political process since the military coup, there have been lots of young people who have protested in their own way against military rule, for rightly or wrongly, for whatever reasons they chose to protest. One of the most striking was a group of students from a local university reading George Orwell's 1984 on the street in protest, just reading a book. That's all they did. They gathered together and read a book. And in doing so, we're taken in for attitude adjustment. Now, I don't know if that's the right channel to do it, but I admire their courage. I also admire the courage of someone else George Orwell wrote about, which was a young Italian soldier he met while in the Spanish Civil War, who was so convicted, who was so driven by his convictions for democracy to fight fascism, that he inspired George Orwell to write a poem about him. And if the young people today, just by taking action and taking a stand, inspire others to write about them in the future, that's enough. Just every small step counts, and that's what young people need to know. Not just in Thailand, but the world, that all their actions transcend that singular moment in time because it will inspire. When you take a stand against absolutism, it always inspires.
Can I ask you, I think that applause was thoroughly well deserved. But what will you do now? No, I'm asking Nina. What will you do now after this? I mean, I'm sure you agree with everybody that young people need to be the vanguard of all of this. But what does it actually mean in practical terms? Does it mean going on the streets reading 1984? How does it present itself as as a way forward?
I think with technology now, young people are not reduced to merely demonstrating on the streets. I've seen a lot of young people get together, form groups and communities using social media as another channel and another platform to get their views heard. A lot of that is also focused on, I think, doing volunteer and community service works for society. But there is no reason why that cannot also be turned into a political stage. And I think that is something that every young people, or a lot of young people, have access to. And in practice is probably going to be a lot more realistic than actually going out in the streets, demonstrating all the time, or getting called in for attitude adjustment.
But I mean, what do you talk about to people? How do you inspire other people to do what you think they should be doing?
Is it
Yeah.
me, still me, or?
No.
Okay. I think and this is probably a problem that is now specific to Thailand, but in all other developing countries as well. And as my fellow panelist Panu mentioned, we have structural issues within the system. Our education system does not really facilitate a channel for young people to actually get inspired or come up with their own ideas or to present them. So we need first of all, we need an overhaul of that system, of that educational mentality, in order to inspire young people to think that they can have a say and they can express views which may not echo or which may not be in line with the views of their elders. And firstly, they need to think that it's okay to have different views. If right now we don't have an institution or an educational structure that supports that sort of direction, I think it'll be very difficult to inspire young people to actually take action or express their views.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, we've got a couple of questions from the floor, carefully pre-selected. I'm going to ask the first man, Thitikan Sachabut from Thailand, to come and ask a question first, please.
Thank you for fruitful discussion from the panelists and also the moderator. My question is basically more back to, as the moderator already mentioned, about the practical approach or strategies that you can use in order to make your voice to be heard. Like, for example, we believe that perhaps a lot of us are inspired and motivated to get our voices to be heard. However, what are the practical approach that you will go and approach the politics or those that have decision making in Thailand, given the situation right now, as you mentioned about the state-led and how attitude adjustment is play a part in the society. So what would be the most practical approach that young people who are already inspired, what to do is the next step, please?
Cod, would you?
I write for a global audience. I am, as Panu writes for, or reports for a global audience as well. By being courageous, by taking a stand, by saying that you won't bow down just because you're told to against a totalitarian government, that is enough, because that inspires people like me and Panu to go out and tell your story. And in essence, the world will know your story. And that doesn't just go for young people in Thailand, that's everywhere. Just be courageous and be convinced of your beliefs. And that's enough for, reporter jocks like us to just come and report your story. I think that's enough.
And I don't think you need to only be a reporter to be able to write. The pen is a very strong weapon. It can be used to express views, even if you're not a reporter, I'm not a reporter, but it has not stopped me from expressing my views or writing what I believe should be the way forward, or expressing my ideas and channeling them through social media, through other media channels, through other media outlets. If you're already inspired, that's already half the work done. Together, you take your other like-minded, inspired people and get your views heard. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you, thank you very much.
Well, my answer is very short. You just have to be honest to what you believe in and be prepared for whatever consequences, whatever you're going to say. But use everything that you can. Say it all. Social media, traditional media, write, talk, discuss in seminars, discuss with your friends. It doesn't matter. Continue to voice your concerns. Continue to voice your message, and eventually, it will get picked up somewhere, or if it doesn't, at least you get to voice something. And you got to realize that by you and other of your peers voicing this continuously, you're not bowing down to anyone. You can just say whatever you want in this society without the need to worry who impose rules upon you. So use what you can and do what you can, and I guess be your own inspiration in that sense.
Jared?
Thank you. I think we need to start at the beginning. I think being practical is the right point. We need to start a discussion among, a bipartisan discussion about the salient issues. Can we come to, an agreement on some common principles? Can we talk to each other and not use violence? And can we agree that, we want a liberal democracy? And really get the ball rolling on those things. And also, this is just outside of politics, but in every profession, you should be mindful of the public interest in whatever you do and whatever decision you make, because that has an effect on Thai society.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your question. Now, there's a questioner from Vietnam, Hai Ly Nguyen. Where's there?
All right. My question is more on the education system, because you have been telling that there need structural changes, right? And I believe that in Vietnam, we need similar stuff too. But all four of you are Thai, and you were brought up in that education system, actually. So, although there are changes that is needed, but I believe that there's still, good part of that. So can you share what actually do you believe is the best in the system now that make you who you are, a very young, energetic leaders at the moment?
Might have to disappoint the questioner. I was educated in Jakarta, Indonesia, at international school there. But I have been to Thai schools and I've sat there. And I think the type of rote learning does not inspire creativity. We need to open younger minds to be more risk-taking and be more practical.
Yeah, I have to disappoint you as well. I grew up in Australia, but I went through Thai school until grade 6, so until I was 10 years old. But I do cover education a lot in my reporter profession, and just briefly, Thailand education has serious systems. We have a situation where a lot of students, a lot of kids are sent to extra schools. You have a situation where parents would go and wait in line at 4 a.m. To get their kids to extra school, extra tuition. And it's very, the kids are sent to the so-called rat race in a very early stage of their life. We're talking, young kids, grade 3, 4, 5, 6, up to the high school. So this is a problem that we have. It's so competitive, but there's no purpose to it. And there's serious problems. And this is just for the urban setting. In the rural area, there's also lots of problems, different kinds of problems, teacher qualification, distribution of knowledge. Without going into too much details, the education system here needs a serious overhaul and a different type of management, but that's an entirely different issue. Young people, though, need to realize that, despite the shortcomings, that their voices still matters, and that, there are other avenues beyond the schools, beyond the public systems that, they can assert themselves or can find, knowledge and other things. So, but the bottom line is the system here is very troubling.
The four people you see on this panel come from very different political ideologies. But I think the one uniting factor among young people is that they want the same things, despite their political differences. We want a system that works. We care about the climate. We care about social welfare. And those things unite us. The things that divide us are these things put in place that were in place long before we were born. So to break through of those restrictions is what you need to do. Not education reform, it's something that you can do yourself by trying to make connections with your fellow youths that you do share a lot of the same interests and you want to pursue those interests together.
I also have to disappoint you. I grew up abroad in the States, Jakarta, Hong Kong, as well as here. But the problem here with the education system is something very, very ironic. A lot of the teachers that become teachers are students who could not get into better faculties. And this is an irony because for me, I am who I am today because certain teachers inspired me because they believed in me when I did not believe in myself. I wish that in any education system, kids and young people can meet those sort of adults who are able to see potential where kids themselves might not see potential in themselves and inspire kids to aim for something higher and be more than they can be, because everyone can and everyone can achieve their goals. Sometimes they just need people to believe in them. And I would like an education system that has those people at the core.
Thank you.
Well, I think that brings us to the end of our discussion. I've really learned a lot listening to these four people beside me. I think if I can just sum it up, I think one of the problems that exists, we saw this in the Middle East from 2010, 2011 onwards, is that lifting the burden of a tough regime, whatever it might be, is not the only step that has to be taken. And a society has to be able to adjust itself to new freedoms and new openings and take control for itself. That's what went wrong in country after country, from Egypt through to Libya, and with only one success, which was Tunisia, and that's still, not certain. These are not easy questions. It's not automatic that because everybody wants freedom, when they get it, that they'll know what to do with it. That's a real problem. But I really thought that Cod put his finger on it when he talked about behaving as though you're free, whether you are or not. I think that's the absolute key to it. And I spend quite a lot of my time in China nowadays, and I remember during the party congress there, being in a cafe in an area where there were lots of artists, and they were packed into this cafe. On the wall was a television set with all these people, a bit like me really, dark jackets and identical red ties and white shirts, all talking the jargon of government. And not a single one of these people in the cafe was listening or interested or felt that their lives depended on these characters who were performing on the stage in their congress, their party congress. And those people were already free of government. They were free to express themselves in the way where they wanted and to behave as though they lived in a free society, even though they actually didn't. So I've learned quite a few things here today talking to these four. I think you'll agree with me that they're all of them extremely thoughtful, maybe a little bit high-minded at times, but one shouldn't criticize high-mindedness. And it's been a real pleasure to listen to what they have to say. So I think we should all give them a big hand.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Chayut, Panu, Cod, Zizi. Absolutely fantastic, guys. Food for thought. Thank you for having the courage, the conviction to come and share your views so honestly. And John, thank you so much for chairing a panel in complex circumstances and making such a great thing. Thank you. It's an
Give
honor.
them a big round of applause. Thank you very much.
Yay.